Alright, so this presentation is going to be making a canvas frame by Matthew and Brian right next to you. So why bother making your own frames? There are three particular reasons: availability of size, cost effectiveness, and quality. Three main reasons for really anything. So the size, when you go to a store, typically you're limited on what you're going to be able to buy, specifically because it is a store, so that is going to limit everything really. Whereas building your own, you can choose your own size, choose what materials. Another good thing to remember is stores are very expensive. If you look over to your right, you're going to have, that is a store-bought frame, or store-bought frame, about $50. And to your left, the big one, that was made for about $10. So you can see an obvious price difference. This particular one, it's a little bit smoother, a little bit more clean. The corners are a lot better. And over on this side, you'll see some of the corners maybe a little bit warped, but the quality is a little bit less. So the store, they're just trying to ship it on out. The other part of that is it's pronounced gesso. Gesso. Probably should have asked that first. So the quality of gesso is a bit on the cheaper side with the store products versus making your own. You can find the better products and make it exactly how it's supposed to be. So this being made for about $10, and this over here for about $50. So essentially, you're getting 5 frames out of that. So it's definitely a good point. So if you're trying to make a lot more art, more quality, make your own frame.
All right. So now that we actually have talked about why you would make a canvas-like frame, I'm going to show you how to actually make one now. This is a really high quality frame. This is actually would cost you about maybe $10 to make for all the materials, and you could probably make a good 2 or 3 of these. Some areas that I would like to point out on these is that you actually have 2 different boards on the sides. You have this board right here, which is for the structure, for helping hold it together and make it very sturdy. And then you have this board, which is actually the part that pulls the frame away from the wall. So that's where you get the nice side. So if you want to have a really wide painting, you would make this board longer than the other ones. This board is also beveled, and the reason why you would bevel it is so that way when you're painting, the canvas is only touching this edge, so that when you paint, you don't accidentally hit the board and get a streak or a line that would appear in your paint. And if that happens, it's very unfortunate and you can't really fix it. Another thing that you don't have to do is we have these corner bracers in here. These just help hold it together. The larger you would go in making these frames, you would definitely need to put these in here. And you also would have to put a beam in the middle of the frame, usually one that would go here and one that would go here, but because this is such a small frame, you don't necessarily need it. For our purposes of what we're doing, we're not going to make quite as an elaborate frame. We're just going to do the beveling and gluing and nailing these together, because we're going to make a relatively small frame, so you don't need all the extra stuff for the structural support. So do you have any questions before we begin?
What kind of wood is that?
This is select pine wood. The type of wood that's used is definitely a factor in the types of frames that you're making. I personally love using the select pine because you have less knots in your wood and it's less prone to warpage. Whereas if you were to get cheaper wood, it tends to warp more and you tend to get more knots in the wood, which make it a big pain when you're trying to cut, and you actually can split your wood.
And what size is it? Is it 2x4 or is it something that comes pre-sized?
The types of boards that you would want to get for this particular size would be 1 inch by 2 inch boards, and then you would just have to get the length of for however much wood you would need. So this was about 8 feet of wood. So, and they were 1 by 2 inch boards of select pine. So, any other questions? No? All right. Well then, we will get to work. First thing you need to do is we need to bevel the wood that we're using. So we're going to go over to the table saw over here, and we're going to do this. But first thing you have to do is make sure that you're wearing your safety goggles, because we don't want anything to fly into your eye. And so safety first, kids. So I'm real stylish, you know. I'm one handsome stud. And next thing you need to do is we're actually alright, next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to bevel the wood that we're going to use. What?
Ventilation, when you have the chance.
Alright, so what we need to do is we need to actually align this up. So this needs to move over a little bit. Alright, so like so. So that's about right. You need to make sure that the blade is actually slightly higher than the board that you're using, so that way you don't get any chippage in your wood that you're using when you're using it. I'm going to lock that down, and then down over here, if you come over, this is where you would angle the blade, and so we're going to actually, oh, that's the height. This one. Here we go. We're actually going to put this at about 25-degree angle. Why 25? Because it's a nice magic number. Alright, so we have it all set up. We got the nice 25-degree angle. As you're going to push the wood through, make sure you go all the way through with it. When you get close to it, you can use this little tool here to brace onto the boards to help hold the wood down and keep your hand away from the blade, because we don't want to cut you. This particular blade actually has a safety mechanism on it that if you actually do cut yourself, the blade will shut off. So with that being said, I'm going to turn on the vacuum to keep all the sawdust out from going in the air, and then I'm going to turn this on and I'm going to quickly cut this, so it's going to be really loud. circle saw. And what we're going to do now is we're actually going to put the angle on to the wood so that way when we put the frames together, they actually will fit together properly. So we're going to do this at a 45-degree angle. So what we want to do is have it measured out. I've got a line drawn on here. Should probably draw it a little bit better. So that's where I'm going to make my cut. So I'm going to pick this up and turn it to 45 degrees. And then I'm going...
the other way?
Oh yeah. This way. I don't want to screw this up. I'm going to go down and make sure that it's going to cut at the right angle while still wearing your safety goggles because we don't want anything to hit you in the eye.
Make sure you lock it.
What?
Lock the angle.
It is locked. There we go. And then make sure the saw comes to a complete stop before pulling it up. And then there you go. And that's how you do your angles. So now we can take off our safety goggles. Go. Okay, so now that we have all of our pieces cut, we would lay them out to make sure that they will fit, and they do. So the next step that you have to do is we're actually going to wood glue all of our pieces together. So what you would do is you take your wood glue and you kind of glob it on there because the wood is super absorbent and will absorb the glue fairly quickly. So then what you do is you kind of press it together and clean it up a little bit. And then you would do that to all 4 sides. And then once you have that done, then you would take your nail gun and you're actually going to put 2 nails in on each corner on the sides. So you would put one here and one here. And then you would turn around and do that to all 4 corners and then kind of let it sit for a little bit while it dries, and then we'd be ready to go on to the next step. Caution with the nail gun. Make sure you have enough pressure because this is a air pressure one. Don't point it at anyone. And this one's actually got a safety mechanism so that it actually won't shoot unless, of course, this is pressed down against something. So don't go pressing this up against someone. They will hate you. Alright. That's good.